Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is March 14th, 2023. I am Phoenix, and welcome to the possibly weekly or bi weekly podcasts. I'm still working out the kinks. Today, I think we're just going to talk about upcoming video games and things I'm looking forward to. Just letting my dog out of the room. So, obviously, this month, the big game, big talk of the town is going to be Resident Evil 4 Remake. Now, personally, I was against this remake when it was first announced. I thought the newer generation games, even though this game was not new generation, it was PS2, but it was still what I felt ahead of its time in terms of graphics and in terms of gameplay. But I was wrong. The reason I was wrong is because I played Resident Evil 8 Village, or Resident Evil Village as it's called, and I could see exactly where this story could be going. And quite frankly, I'm very interested in what they're going to do. And now, if you haven't played Resident Evil 8, I'm going to spoil a little bit of it. Not too much, just a little tidbit. I think that the reason they are doing a remake of Resident Evil 4 is to tie in the mold as the ancestor or the progenitor, I believe that's what the word is, of Los Plagas. If that's the case, if that's the case, then I can see why they're doing this. And I'm not gonna play around here. The gameplay looks fun. I haven't tried the demo out. I want to, but at the same time, I know it'll just get me hyped for it even more. And I'm already an impatient person and an anxious person when it comes to new releases. But your boy is looking forward to this game. If you've never played Resident Evil 4, the first time you ever play it is an experience unto itself. Personally, it's going to be kind of hard for me to describe it as I've beaten it several times on New Game Plus with advanced weaponry and knowing where everything's at. But I'm going to try and explain how this game makes you feel. Imagine, if you would, being stuck in a small village, kind of not much like Resident Evil Village was, as a trained U.S. U.S. I believe that they just call Leon a U.S. agent, but he's heavily trained. He's like the go-to guy for sending out on Black Ops missions and such. Imagine you're one of those people, and you're put into the task of going to this isolated village and this weird cut off land looking for a very high valuable target that has been kidnapped. And let me adjust my microphone a little bit because it's peaking. All right. And when you get there, something's not quite right with the villagers. Now, Leon, of course, has been through something like this before, as we all know from Resident Evil 2. But this is different. Now, the mood to this entire game is that it begins simply like that. You're let off of a truck by the police officers of the area. You are sent to a cabin. The person in the cabin kind of is unhinged. Other people attack you. The police officers that bring you there, suddenly the bridge or whatever that they drove on is collapsed. They're gone. their truck is at the bottom of a ravine, and you start hearing everybody talking in unison like a hive mind. You have one pistol, and shortly after that, you get a shotgun, which you'll carry with you for most of the game. Oh, and during this time, when you get the shotgun, within the first 5 minutes that you're in the village, you're already facing an entire horde of villagers, all coming from all shapes and sizes, coming to converge directly at you like a colony of ants. And grabbing that shotgun during this moment, a man with a bag on his head, much like Leatherface or Jason Voorhees, carrying a chainsaw, will come at you, who will who if he hits you will basically decimate you in one hit, depending on if you dodge or if you just stand there and take it. This is the first 10 minutes of the game. This is what I like to call action survival horror. It is possible to beat this game. You do get upgrades, you do get new weaponry. There are a lot of flaws I have with the game, or flaws that I see with the game and gripes I have with the game. Hopefully they change a lot of this in the remake. But for the most part, you basically have to acquire this high value target, bring them to safety, and exit. But complications arise, of course. Resident Evil 4 has introduced us to one of the most famous villains of the Resident Evil series, Krauser, who made an appearance, I think, in two other games. Either, I know for one, it was in the Mercenaries game for the 3DS, which is non-canon and is simply just an entire game based on the Mercenaries minigame that Resident Evil games have given you now in almost every game. And I believe he was in either the Umbrella Chronicles or the Dark Side Chronicles, which was a on rails gun shooter game, or it was just a rail gun shooter. I'm looking for that, by the way. I'm hoping that they finally port those to the PS4 or to the PC, because I really want to play them, despite being railgun games, because I would like to see the lore and more of the canon for myself. Resident Evil 4 also reintroduced us to Ada Wong. It completely reinvented the character of Leon S. Kennedy from being just a rookie cop who was already cool in his own right, wearing the RPD Raccoon City Police Department uniform, into the mimetic superhero that most people see him as now, due to the sheer amount of karate, backflips, agility, and acrobats that he uses throughout this entire game. And it introduced us to one of the most annoying characters in video game history, the high value target, Ashley. Even when you play New Game Plus and you have a suit that protects her from being taken by enemies, which is a game mechanic, they have to include a horrible side effect in that the suit that she wears, an armored suit like a night suit, makes a loud noise every time she walks, just to infuriate you even more, making you have to deal with it. It also introduced into the series the idea that once you kill or once you take out a zombie, it's not quite dead. As something called the Lost Plagueis, a new concept that was featured in this game, may come out of their body, may come out of their head, will basically come out of their head and come at you, much like Dead Space. And I sincerely can see possibly some inspiration from Dead Space. I mean, possibly some inspiration from Resident Evil 4 for the Dead Space series, in that this is basically a mechanic that happens in Dead Space throughout the entire game. Now, Dead Space is another momentous game on its own. I may actually talk about that in a minute, but Resident Evil 4 really did change the game when it came to survival horror, and it flipped the script on Resident Evil as a whole. I am very, very excited to play this remake. I'm hoping that it's going to be long. I'm hoping it's not going to be short like the Resident Evil 3 remake was. And I'm hoping that there are parts where you play as Ada and it intertwines their stories instead of having it be DLC or be post game content that you unlock in the main menu. The one game that I am not really I have mixed emotions about this, but Resident Evil 5 remake is in the works already. Now, there's a lot of divisive feelings about Resident Evil 5 in terms of the action, the tone, and apparently not feeling like a Resident Evil game, which I can see, but I personally find that to be I basically find that to be my favorite Resident Evil game. The hours I've invested in that game on multiple platforms is a testament to that, and I honestly don't think that that needs a remake. That game came out for the PS3. They have a port of it on the PS4, port of it on the PS5. I mean, a port of it on the PC. I don't know there's a port on the PS5, and I don't know there's one on the Xbox Series X, but it did come out for the 360 as well. But I really don't think that that needs a remake. Now, if they're trying to include the mold into the remake, I can thoroughly understand that. But for the most part, the story itself and everything that transpires in the game concerning the virus in that game and what the antagonist is doing could be very standalone-ish and does not need a remake. Now, I was wrong about Resident Evil 4 remake. I might be wrong about Resident Evil 5 remake. And if I am, hey, I'm wrong, and I'll be happy to say I'm wrong, because Resident Evil 5 is one of my favorite games. All I'm gonna say about the remake is, I hope they keep the gun system in place, the loot system, the level select system. I hope they keep all that in Resident Evil 5 remake, because that's one of the things about it that makes me enjoy playing it so much, is the grinding and the going back and forth in the level into like different levels and chapters, and basically being able to basically have the ability to do what you want. That's what I like about it. We have The Last of Us remastered coming out on the PC. Now I have that on the PS4, but I may pick it up for the PC so I can stream it due to the Last of Us HBO show being on HBO Max and I guess HBO the channel, which just concluded. I have a lot of mixed feelings about that show as a video game fan. For the most part, I feel that it was probably a 7 out of 10 in terms of how the show progressed and the things they did. I do have a lot of major gripes with certain characters and certain things, particularly Bill and Frank. I feel that they could have easily done a two-part episode of Bill and Frank in which Bill helps Joel much like he does in the game. I have my ideas about how they could have done that and still continue the tragic, sad story that they did in his episode. And I have gripes with the second to last episode. I felt that that could have been at least 2 episodes. I felt that characters are underdeveloped in that episode, and they rushed through what made that section of the game so emotional. But with video games, they're a different medium, so it's hard. With video games, you have carte blanche to make it as long as you want, well, within your budget, and make you feel the emotions you feel. And it is different holding a controller in your hands or playing with a mouse and keyboard and controlling the characters going through these scenarios as opposed to watching them on a television screen. Now, the last episode of The Last of Us, the season finale, it captured that emotion for me in the last 20 minutes of the show. No spoilers. Don't worry about it. I'm not gonna spoil it. I think they did a lot of it right. I think a little bit of it was off course in the last 5 minutes with some of the dialogue choices in terms of how they delivered the dialogue and how the actors emoted some of the things. But personally, I was happy with it. And as I said, as a whole, I'm gonna give the show probably about a 7 out of 10. The Bill and Frank episode really disappointed me, as most of the people who were probably hearing this, they have probably played the game, so they know that there was a lot they cut out, and they just decided to skip entirely for the Bill and Frank episode, which I wasn't a fan of. And as I said, the winter episode with David, I felt it was rushed. I felt that it didn't really have the same impact the video game had. But the show the show was a good landing. I think it had a good landing, had a good start, had a good landing. As for season 2, from what I understand, apparently season 2 may not be the full The Last of Us Part 2 video game. Apparently they have confirmed that, and this isn't storyline spoilers or anything. I mean, it's about the storyline, but it's not a spoiler. They have confirmed that season 2 is probably not going to be, or they don't plan to make the entire second game into one season. So, while I was adamant that I'm not going to watch season 2, I may watch it if they're going to spread that game out into multiple seasons and give the characters the breathing room they need in order to truly give some characters the empathy that they were searching for in the video game. As the video as because as a lot of people know, the second game has had a lot of division and has had a lot of arguing and very mixed opinionated thoughts on whether or not they did a good job with it. And I am one of the detractors of that game. I feel that I feel that the antagonist or deuterogonist is not really that empathetic. I feel they kind of forced a lot of it down our throats. They kind of took the people who liked the first game and slapped us in the face. I just feel that a lot of the decisions were very questionable. I feel that Naughty Dog got a little too big for their britches. They got a little too self-righteous. They thought that they ruled the world, and they tried to basically force us to take what I felt was a plate of boiling hot, undercooked food, or not boiling hot, undercooked. They basically, to me, it would be like Gordon Ramsay taking undercooked food, giving it to somebody, and saying, "Eat this, and you're gonna like it because I'm Gordon Ramsay, and you're not gonna say anything about it." Well, people did say something about it, and the backlash was fierce on both sides, from the game publishers to the fans to the game publishers to the fans, back and forth, and it was a catastrophe, especially when the leaks first came out for the game. Dead Space. I still need to complete the Dead Space remake. I am still only on, I think, chapter 1. Dead Space 2 was one of my favorite games many years ago. I once played that game maybe 6 times in a row in one day due to the fact that I knew where everything was and I had all my weapons overpowered and I was just simply just running through the motions to see if I could just beat the game faster and faster without, without doing like out of bounds stuff and exploits, but more just being like, since I know where everything goes and everything does, let's see if I can like smoothly go through this without any real hiccups and just beat the game normally as fast as I can and just do it like in a smooth motion. I am liking the Dead Space remake at the moment. Um, as I said, I'm only on chapter one, but the inclusion of Isaac having a voice in Dead Space One as opposed to being silent, I I think that might actually help the game a little bit. Now, in the first game, in the original game, Isaac didn't speak in the first game. He was like Gordon Freeman in Half Life. The only thing you would ever hear from him were grunts or just some just some like mumbling and verbally attacking the aliens or the necromorphs in the game as he stomped on them. And I think at the end of the game he actually did speak. I think once, and they also never showed his face in the original game. You could find through, I think, hacking the game, you could see like his face at the end of the game by like going around in a spectator type mode to like look at the world and the designs. But that's another thing that I don't know if I'm a particular fan of showing his face so early. But since they showed it in the second game and he spoke a lot from the second game on, okay, fair enough. They have precedents for it, so I'm going to let it go and I'm going to just enjoy the game because it's not like it's a major departure. It's a little bit different, but so be it. So far, playing the game feels right at home for me. The controls are essentially the same. Picking up the controller and starting to play it, I wasn't that afraid. I did get jump scared once playing it so far, but playing the game, since I'm used to the other games and I was a veteran of Dead Space 2 and did play through Dead Space 1 and I never did beat Dead Space 3. That's something that I still need to do. I'm not going to try to toot my own horn, but I was very prepared for this game and for what was going on in it and what was going to happen and for things to jump out, things to bum rush me. I was very prepared to fight off the enemies in that game. I knew what I was doing when I was playing it. What I'm really looking forward to, or I guess not really looking forward to, but I guess wanting to see is if they're gonna try and remake Dead Space 2 or not. And because for two reasons. One, Dead Space 2 is an awesome game. If you've never played it, I highly recommend playing through it at least once. Dead Space 1 is great. You can play it and then play Dead Space 2, or you can watch a recap video for the story, then watch it. The new game, I do know some spoilers for the new game. I'm not going to delve into them. I'm just going to say new remake obviously changes some aspects, but for the original Dead Space 2, doesn't really matter because it's going based off of the original Dead Space 1, not the remake. And second, for seeing if they're gonna remake Dead Space 2, that means they might remake Dead Space 3. Because for those who don't know, Dead Space 3, even though I didn't beat it, I know this for a fact. Dead Space 3 does not have an ending. At the end of the game, it basically ends on a cliffhanger. Then they had DLC to resolve that cliffhanger. DLC then has another cliffhanger. And then, because of poor sales for the game, I believe, or for other reasons, company shut down, or I think just ceased on making Dead Space. And I was at the time I was like good. I was like good because I was very hostile with that game when it first came out, but also I was also sad because now I would never get a conclusion to the story. So I was kind of mixed on that whole situation. So I'm really eager to see if they are going to remake all these games and finally give us the conclusion that we need. There was also some missing pieces that were never resolved that from Dead Space 2 that never ended up in Dead Space 3, so I'm hoping that they actually bring those things back up, introduce them in the remake, give their own new remake twist on them, a new spin on them, bring them in the Dead Space 3 remake if they do it, and then we get some resolution on a lot of things because for me personally, I was really kind of sad and kind of hurt that the game Dead Space 3 kind of ignored a lot of plot points that people were actually getting interested in when it came to DLC and things that we were we as fans were interested in. It would be kind of like Game of Thrones setting up different small characters and giving us different little add-ons and additions and teases of things, and then suddenly just dropping it without any real indication. And I'm still kind of upset to that for that. Still kind of upset of that about that to this day, but so be it. Can't change it. Let me look at what else is coming out this month or next month. If I have any more thoughts on these. WWE 2K23. I'm gonna be quite honest. I used to love the WWE games, but since they took out on the PS4 version the ability to add your own music for entrance themes and such, I kind of just stopped caring because that was one of my favorite things was to you know create my own characters, my own music, my own interests because I'm very artistic when it comes to that. So that's going to be. I don't know if the game's fun. I may try. I may check it out. The Legend of Heroes: Trials of Azure. I'm gonna be honest with you. I've never beaten a Trials game. I have all four Trials of Cold Steels. I have all three Trials of the Skies. And I was very happy that the Legend of Heroes Trials from Zero and Azure are coming to the game after that are coming to the U.S. But I still haven't beaten any of them. I know the basic premise of the games. I like the basic premise, but to be fair, I just have so much that I need to play, and when I start to try to play games at this point in my life, I kind of just lose attention from it, and I really need to work on that as a gamer. Excuse me. And I need to just try and fix that because if I'm going to play games and buy games, I really need to finish them. The new Shazam's coming out. Oh boy. I'll admit, not the game, the movies kind of interested me. I'm very curious as to how the wizard Shazam himself is back in it. I have heard basically from the descriptions and such of Shazam to as to who Helen Mirren's character is and what's going on. It's not really what's going on, but kind of the basic idea of it. It's got a really nice concept to it. I'll admit that Helen Mirren's character and Lucy Liu's character and the other female characters in the movie, I'll admit, it sounds interesting. It doesn't sound like they just made up some enemies for Shazam to fight just to make Helen Mirren look cool. I mean, Helen Mirren always is cool, but it doesn't seem like they just are writing a script just to write a script. It does fit with the lore of Shazam in terms of the fact that Shazam is based on the Greek gods, and this is more Greek mythology. It's not like they made up some. It's not like they suddenly decided to create a character out of thin air just to have Shazam have someone that'll actually be able to beat him, or could possibly beat him, or could beat him. They actually are staying to Greek mythology, and I like that. It's very hard for me to put into words what I'm trying to say without sounding like a like a like an empty-headed fool. But I just mean it's not like. And now here's this random superpower character. No, it makes sense. I like it. It has me intrigued. I like in the trailer how Shazam actually references Helen Mirren in the Fast and the Furious. I think it's pretty funny. It also does fit with the theme of Shazam, even though it's a joke with by having the Shazam family, having Billy Batson himself finding the family that he longed for in the first movie due to his sad backstory. And to be honest, I'm a Shazam fan. Uh, Not really movie wise, but more character wise. Now, personally, I am not a fan of the current incarnation of Shazam, in which I, I always want to call him Captain Marvel, which was his original name. He would say Shazam to turn into Captain Marvel, but Marvel finally, I think, sued to get the rights to that name in order to be able to call Carol Danvers Captain Marvel for her movie. Excuse me. Excuse me. I apologize for that. And but the original incarnations of Shazam were when Billy Batson would say Shazam and would turn into the adult Shazam who could fly and has the powers like Superman has and such. He was not in control, and he was not a kid in an adult body. Basically, he would become Shazam, who was a different person altogether, who had his own mind and his own emotions, kind of like the Hulk almost. If kind of like the Hulk, but minus Bruce having any kind of impact on the Hulk's psyche. Captain Marvel, Shazam would have his own likes, his own distaste, and for the most part, I think they would actually have to struggle to get him to say Shazam to turn back into Billy. And Billy, I think, wouldn't even know what Shazam would do. And I'm not sure if he would know what Shazam did, or if he could see or like if he could see like if he would be along for the ride but had no control over anything. I'm not sure, but I know that Shazam himself was a different entity than Billy when he would turn into him, and I like that more than the idea that Billy Batson says Shazam, grows into a human body, and basically is just a childlike superhero, much like Superman, who can fly and shoot lightning and such. That's why I like Black Adam so much in the movie version form, because he knows who he is. He's an adult. He changes. He remains the same. Well, I mean, I'm kind of a hypocrite here because I'm saying he doesn't become a different entity, but I mean, I like the idea that Shazam should be all business when he turns into Shazam. He shouldn't be a childlike mindseted Superman. Black Adam, in my opinion, fixed that by having The Rock be an adult who turns into Black Adam, and because he's an adult, he doesn't change forms except for his muscles get bigger when he's Black Adam, and he's very serious. But at the same time, I don't know. Maybe if they were to find a way, I know that if they were to find a way to have Shazam be an idea and concept in film where Billy Batson were to transform into Shazam, and Shazam was a different being and a different personality altogether, but also keep Black Adam as being that Black Adam stays as Teth Adam and doesn't change personalities, or maybe or something like that. I would be happy with that. It would throw a kink into things, but I would be happy with it. They could find a storyline reason for it. They could find a way for Black Adam to have overrode the system or found a loophole to keep his original personality and keep in control of himself. But it's neither here nor there, since Black Adam is, I think, now persona non grata in the DC universe for the movies. And I believe that, well, I don't believe that. I think that Shazam is probably going to go the way of the dinosaur pretty soon now, with James Gunn in control of DCEU. One thing that I will say about the DC movies that I didn't really like, and I had to explain to my sister, was the portrayal of Dr. Fate. For those who don't know Dr. Fate, the the idea behind Dr. Fate is that a powerful wizard put himself inside of a gold helmet, and if he deems you worthy, kind of like Thor's hammer Mjolnir in the in the Marvel universe, if he finds you worthy, you can touch the helmet. And if you touch it and you're not worthy, then you get struck down by his power. But if you are worthy and you pick it up, when you put it on your head, you stop being you. You become the wizard, Dr. Fate, that is inside the helmet. He uses your body as a vessel in the comic books. Now in the Black Adam movie, they didn't do that. They basically just said that Pierce Brosnan was Pierce Brosnan, and that the helmet basically just gave him superpowers. They didn't, and that the helmet just found him worthy. They basically tried to make it be like Thor. Now, I wasn't a fan of that. I liked Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate. I liked the entire idea of what was going on, but I wish that Dr. Fate had been portrayed accurately, because the entire concept of Dr. Fate is the user may like the power that is given to him by the helmet, but it comes at a cost. Because Dr. Fate, the actual wizard in the helmet, may not want you to take that helmet off after you put it on. So you're gonna have to fight mentally physically and probably magically to get that helmet off. And if Dr. Fate finds someone else that he finds to be worthy enough to have the helmet, either by means of someone else putting on the helmet to as part of a plan or something, or being given permission to use the helmet, and then Dr. Fate sees that they're like a powerful wizard like Zatanna, or maybe even John Constantine, he's not gonna let that helmet come off. So for the most part, Dr. Fate is a mixture. He's an anti-hero in that he preserves everything and helps everything, much like Doctor Strange, but he's also very selfish and power hungry. And I wish they had covered that in the Black Adam film. But alas, what's done is done. They can't really they can't really do much more about it. Black Adam is gone. I think Doctor Fate's probably gone from the DCU. Hawkman's probably gone. I actually liked Aldous Hodge in it. I've known him since his days in Leverage. I saw his brother in The Purge Anarchy, and I was very surprised and very happy when I saw him. Well, when I first saw him get a major role in a film with Tom Cruise in Jack Reacher, Never Look Back or Never Go Back. I think it was called Never Go Back. It may have been called Never Look Back. Or I mean, Jack Reacher Never Go Back or Jack Reacher Never Look Back. And I was also really happy to see that he had gotten a role with The Rock in such a huge leading role or huge supporting role, almost a lead role, and I was really happy for him because I really liked his work on Leverage. That's if you're for those who are unaware, that's a show on TNT, or was a show on TNT, starring Timothy Hutton, Aldous Hodge, who I just mentioned, Christian Kane, Gina Bellman, Beth Riesgraf, and who was the last person in it? No, that was all of them. I think all five of them. It was basically kind of like a 2000 2000s version, or 2000 early late 2000s early 2010s version of the Mob Squad, or that other show that came out, Breakout King, somewhat like that, where the bad guys team up together in order to stop other bad guys, like basically the main character says in the premise of the show. Sometimes in order to beat the bad guys, you need work. You need sometimes in order to beat bad guys, you need bad guys yourself. So it's kind of like the A Team, but if the A Team were legitimate, honest to goodness criminals and not people who were framed for something they didn't do. But on the subject of Black Adam, I was very happy with Aldous Hodge in it. I felt that Tornado, I believe that was her name in the movie. I actually heard at one point them call her Red Tornado, or that may have been her code name. I wasn't too pleased about that because Red Tornado is a different character altogether, who's a cyborg, kind of like Vision in Marvel. But I liked the effects they used for her. I liked her powers and how they depicted them in the film. Um, Atom Smasher, I thought he was great. I could see the comparisons to Ant Man very clearly, but they're both two actual characters in the DCEU. I mean, in Marvel and in DC. So again, there's always going to be the comparisons. There's always going to be that for most characters. But I like the film, and I like the end credit scene. I mean, the mid credit scene, and I'm sad that things worked out the way they did. But at least now we're getting a Warhammer 40k television show out of it. And I'll say this right now: I don't know how that show is going to keep viewers. I know that hardcore fans of Warhammer are going to watch it, but for the common person who's going to watch this show with Henry Cavill, who's promised that it's going to stay true to the lore of Warhammer 40k, this show might not make it. As much as I want a Warhammer 40k accurate show or movie, I am very, very, very much convinced and very worried that people are going to quit watching after the first or second episode if they keep to the lore and they keep to everything that happens in Warhammer 40k. Because for those who are unaware of Warhammer 40k and the universe that is built around it in fantasy, it is one of the most gruesome, violent, horrific, downright evil universes that could be possibly thought of in terms of how everything works from the Emperor in of the mankind in the show or in the universe to the orcs to the chaos the 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 gods of chaos in the chaos realm itself, and certain aliens on the show. So I'm gonna say this right now, and if I'm wrong, I'll come back and I'll say I was wrong. I think that people are gonna tune into this show. They're gonna watch it. They're gonna watch one episode of it, or maybe even 20 minutes of it, and they're gonna turn it off. As much as I respect Henry Cavill for keeping to the source material, as I would do, I don't think there's any way that this show is going to survive. And I'm really glad that he quit The Witcher when he did, though, because if they were not true to the actual lore and works of the show, which they have been proven to have not been, or have supposedly been proven to have not been, then there's no sense in making a show. The reviews and the reactions to season 2 of The Witcher say it all when it comes to straying from lore and straying from canon. Now, you don't have to be 100%. The Last of Us has shown us that. But you need to be within the ballpark, and you need to be maybe 80 to 90% accurate. There's no reason for you to take already created materials and decide I'm going to change everything about it and change everything that people care about and like about this product and do what I want because I don't care and the fans can deal with it. When people do that and writers do that, as much as I am positive and nice, excuse me, I really, really, really enjoy when a show gets thrashed and has to either course correct or the show just ends. Because what's the point in making a show for fans if you're going to treat your fans like they are beneath you? Amazon's going through the same thing right now with the new Lord of the Rings show. They've actually recently gone on a comment deleting purge, sending people emails threatening to ban their accounts completely for sending reviews that were not favorable to the Rings of Power out. Reviews that weren't even vulgar, weren't over the line, and weren't in any way vile. One such person is Hill versus Babyface, who actually read the review that he left to let us know exactly what he said. And all he did was give sincere, constructive criticism. Explained that he didn't feel that it was a good fantasy show, and that the characters were underdeveloped, or or this and that, you can watch his video on the matter where he actually goes over it and tells you his review that he left, and they actually sent him an email, and it was a mass email because it wasn't directed towards him. Because and the way they worded it, you would tell it was a mass email saying his review was removed for harassment or for community guidelines or for some other thing like that. Trying to censor people's opinions when they are not in any way being troublesome or trying to review bombard just because they don't like it, but actually are giving sincere thoughts and opinions as to why they don't like something is something that I can't abide by. I think that that is a horrible practice, and I think that Amazon should be ashamed of themselves for it. If Netflix were to do that, I would call them out the same way, and Hulu. But as I said, nothing needs to be a complete one-to-one retelling of something that people love. You know how I know that? I saw Watchmen in theaters. It was nearly one-to-one to the book, or to the graphic novel. Only like one thing was changed about it. One major thing was changed. And I'll tell you right now, even though I bought the special edition, even though I bought the director's cut, yes, I bought the director's cut and I bought the special edition, which is like an extended director's cut, which is even more true to the book. I still was bored out of my mind watching it because I realized this is not something that can be put to film, not in a one-to-one variation. I applaud Zack Snyder for trying, and like I said, I'm kind of a hypocrite because I bought the DVDs. I bought the director's cut, and then I bought the special edition that comes with the comic book, an extra disc, and a full length, like 5 hour long version of the film. But it did not work as a film, not as a one-to-one reiteration, in my opinion. The acting was good, but the story and everything was not made for film. And I'm not even going to talk about the HBO show because I found that to be disrespectful to the comic book and the storyline. I found the last two episodes in particular to be very much insulting to the ideas and the points that were made in the original graphic novel, which they said that this was a sequel to, not a sequel to the movie, but a sequel to the graphic novel. And they changed things to their own whims in the final episodes just to try and be cool and different. And it really, really upset me. You know what? One movie did do things the right way, where they changed some aspects, but basically, they basically kept it in such a way where it it the it didn't really hurt much. Zack Snyder's Superman, Man of Steel. The entire idea of Superman having the entire Kryptonian Codex and every single Kryptonian's DNA inside his body that that could be extracted to create a new Krypton is a great idea. I never thought of it. Zack Snyder did, and I thought that that was a fantastic idea. I didn't like the ending to Man of Steel. I'll admit that. The damage that he created during his final fight, I thought was ridiculous for a Superman film. But they did actually work into that, into Batman versus Superman, and did work into the idea that he is a disaster or a person of mass disaster in that film. And I'm really happy that they slowly have worked on or did work on Superman becoming the Superman that we all know and love, despite being a little darker and a little edgier. Warner Brothers has sold a lot of the DC rights to Netflix and to Amazon, and hopefully that means we can get more Snyderverse as opposed to this new James Gunnverse that's happening in the DCU. If that's the case, I'm all for it. I know the plans Zack Snyder has for his Justice League trilogy, which now would be two movies, as his cut, which was, I think, a very good film and 8 out of 10 probably. And I don't think that he should go the route that he wants to go with the next two parts of the Justice League films. If he were to go that route, I think some changes need to be taken. That's my personal opinion, though. Marvel's on a course correction, as it seems. From what I understand, the Marvels was actually delayed again. It's due to be released at the time it was recently announced, but it was delayed before that, and apparently it's being course corrected because Disney is suffering badly from the horrible films that have come out recently in the Marvel franchises. This is a good thing because that means they've learned. They've learned why people are having problems with the films. They've learned possibly to cut down on a lot of the comedy, make a coherent story, and actually put effort, time, and love into it. I was one of the ones that actually liked Captain Marvel. I will say I found the movie to be average at best, but I loved the character. So I don't have a problem with Brie Larson like a lot of people do. My problem mostly stems from Marvel's writing as of late. WandaVision, terrible. I know a lot of people are going to not like that opinion, but the reason it was terrible was because they tried too hard in promoting it and in interviews to set up a lot of surprises and get people hyped, only for a lot of it to be a dud. They had one good idea that happened midway through the show that could have changed everything, and it ended up becoming just an immature joke at the end. Now, if they're gonna do what I think they're gonna do with the upcoming Avengers films, I will come on here and say I was wrong. I now will say WandaVision was not that bad. I'll say it was good. I'll say, hey, I thought it was a slap in the face, but it was clearly foreshadowing for what was going to happen. But what you don't do is you don't introduce characters from other franchises that Marvel didn't even own up until like maybe a week or two the show before the show debuted or before the show started production, and then laugh in our faces when it's revealed to be basically one big April Fool's prank or one big gag that means nothing. Falcon and Winter Soldier. I'm gonna be honest. I thought that was a better show. Loki. Loki was good. But you know what really makes WandaVision a horrible show? Two things. Number one, no Doctor Strange. Everybody was waiting on him. And in the universe and the way it's set in terms of the lore, Doctor Strange should have been in that show somewhere. Number two, the second reason that was a terrible show, the follow up, which the show was leading to, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, they literally hand wave WandaVision entirely, or they hand wave her actions in WandaVision, or like the major idea of her having done what she did to the people in WandaVision by just saying, "I'm not here to talk about that," and her just being like, "Okay." Granted, they did show her mental state after that show ended, and for those who've seen the Multiverse of Madness, if you know, you know when it comes to the villains and the actions taken in that film. But I felt those two things especially ruined WandaVision. I had really high hopes for that show, and it was disappointing. And for those of you that are upset that Falcon is Captain America, at the current time in the comic books, I believe Falcon is in fact Captain America still. He's been Captain America for the last at least 8 years. Yes, Bucky did become Captain America at one point after Civil War, but Falcon is Captain America. Steve Rogers in the comic books is alive. He's de-aged, he's young again, but he's not Captain America. He didn't want that mantle anymore. He wanted to be Steve Rogers. He wanted Falcon to be Captain America, and he wanted himself to be Steve Rogers. Personally, unless the course correction fixes everything outside of Shang-Chi, I feel has been an afterthought in Marvel. I had told some people before Endgame that when Endgame comes out, I'm gonna stop watching the Marvel movies because I feel like my journey with the movies are over. Like I grew up with it. Like, well, I didn't grow up with it, but the analogy is it's like high school. It's like school. We started with Iron Man. We get to Endgame, and after that, we ride off into the sunset. And we don't look back at it. In the newer films, that's for newer people to watch. I mean, new fans to watch, and for people to just enjoy. And the new class in terms of fans, moviegoers, they can enjoy the newer stuff. Seems I should have possibly done that and not kept watching Marvel. But then again, I wouldn't have been able to see Shang-Chi, which I felt was an amazing film and everything that the Iron Fist Netflix show should have been. But that's another story for another day. Uh, I hope my rambling has helped some of you through background noise. and I'm still working out the kinks. I have guests lined up whenever I get this thing going properly. When I get editing down properly, so I can get rid of the ums and the repeating and me stumbling over my words with my stuttering. I have one person in particular who I think is an amazingly interesting person that I think you guys are gonna love you when you meet them. And they also have a tie to one of my favorite loves. Albeit it's a very small tie, but there is a tie to professional wrestling, a subject that I love that I could get into a lot more, but I won't, because as much as I am informative and nice, I can be pretty toxic when it comes to wrestling, as I have my own very strong opinions about certain wrestlers, certain production things, certain writing aspects and real life aspects about the real and certain things about the real life going ons in wrestling behind the scenes of the shows. I hope you all take care, and I'll see you next show. Peace out.